Number 25 in her career, Ramona Shelburne, in search of win number 583.5 in his career, Woody Page. Good luck to you both in Showdown. Showdown 1, higher level of brain freeze in the NBA this week. P.J. Tucker not touching the ball and letting a basket get scored in his face, nearly leading to a loss, although Houston did win this game. Or 2 nights ago, Kyle Korver inbounding the air ball. Woody, I go to you for my brain freezes.
Yeah, it was Tucker. Culver at least was trying to make a basketball play and just messed it up. He wasn't thinking. But Tucker looked like he was standing there watching a game of craps in an alley.
Yeah, well, Tucker knew that James Harden was standing right behind him, and the game plan these days is just give the ball to James Harden. So he's getting out of the way.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm giving Woody the point. Korver was trying to make a basketball play. Inbounding the ball, hardly a basketball play, but we'll move on. Showdown 2. Take a listen to this.
Our lack of focus at the end of games has been awful. That's why we lose games like this. So I'm not necessarily, I'm happy with the win, but I'm not necessarily happy with how we close this game out.
It was a great start for you guys tonight, and that has been an issue at times this season.
A team critique about a lack of focus. Is Reggie Jackson making Blake's team critique better or worse, Ramona?
I don't know. What were you talking about? A lack of focus?
Yeah, okay. All right. You got Woody Page jokes in a matchup versus Woody Page?
He was making it better. He made, actually, Blake's point. He's focusing on the camera, not on the game. Help him out.
It's the oldest trick in the Showdown book. You're making my case for me. Woody Page, take the FaceTime.
In recent days, the NFL has again received well-deserved criticism for what happened last weekend. But today, good news out of the league office when the chief medical officer announced that documented concussions are down 23.8% this year. They've gone from close to 300 to in the low 200s. I think that's a positive sign after the efforts have been made, and we hope that this trend continues through the playoffs and next year.
The one question I would say there is one key word, documented. What's documented, what's not documented? Let's document win number 584.5 for Woody. Assists don't exist. Look at this stat. His last 263 points unassisted. What it means with this panel, and also what this Browns story means. Ooh, let's go around the horn. And please do not search Browns and that word on Twitter when you're trying to get to the bottom of the story. Just allow us to do that, okay? Here's where the James Harden streak is all time. 3 wilts and then James. So those first 2 wilts, by the way, were separated by 1 game. That broke the streak. And then he immediately restarted. So 96 of 97 for him. 43 points per game over the last 21 games. Here's where that ranks recently. And, of course, the biggest wow. Again, his last 263 points. Like the steel dunk that won the game last night, which got him to 61 at MSG, unassisted. Ramona, I don't know where to start. I mean, we've done this for 3 weeks, but we'll do this again today. What about the numbers jumps out to you?
Well, did you see that spot where he was 5 of 20 in threes, and he was 22 of 25 from the free throw line? He's the first player in NBA history to shoot at least 20 free throws and at least 20 threes in the same game. And not only he made 22 of those free throws, that's more than 13 teams that played yesterday. Okay, I'm here in D.C., so I got access to our research stuff. Caroline looked this up for me. Those 20.
So that's impressive, or that's him gaming the system? I mean, 5 of 20 from 3 on its head. Not impressive. It's volume.
It's volume, and it's kind of the example of how James Harden has been doing it the whole way, right? He's not the best at anything except for all of those gaming the system type of plays, getting to the free throw line. He's not the most athletic. He's not the best shooter, but he is just a fantastic scorer. And even though you know he's going to drive to the basket the way he is, even though the entire defense is set up to try to stop him, you can't stop him. And that's what I think is so impressive about this. They know it's coming, and they still cannot
Tim Kalishaw, it's been about 3 weeks I've asked you the same exact question, but what are you seeing from James Harden now?
All right, I don't want to sound like the Dallas guy raining on the Houston parade, some sort of rivalry thing. Let me just say this. Out of these 5 games where he's averaging 52 points a game, he's shot 50% one time in those 5 games. He's shooting 35% from 3 overall, which is very average. And people keep saying he's doing all this and the Rockets are winning in the West. They haven't had back-to-back wins since
All right,
December.
you know what you sound like?
Win,
You sound like a guy from
lose.
Dallas who's taking the Dallas side over a guy from Houston for some sort of rivalry.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
No. I'm giving him credit, though, for the free throws that she talked about. He's scoring 16 points a night at the foul line, which is just absurd. He has mastered the rules. He knows how to travel. He knows how to get away with it. He knows how to get to the foul line.
Okay. Tim Gallishow is traveling into the negatives right now, and he's not getting away with it. How about you, Woody Page?
I go back to your statistic about he's never getting, nobody's getting assist on his scoring. We've always heard the expression he plays well without the ball. James Harden plays better with the ball than anybody else in the league. And here's a stat for you, talking about stats that stood out to me, was that he, in the month of January, has had 49, count them, step-back three-pointers. Yeah. And guess what? Nobody else in the league during this month has had more than 10. And guess what? He hasn't been called for travel on any one of those 49 when he probably traveled on probably half of them at least. I started thinking this morning about the 100-point game that Wilt Chamberlain had at one point that never would be reproduced. Well, guess what? Here's a guy that might score 100 points if it's a high-scoring game and goes into an overtime or so. He is on that kind of roll.
Okay.
As Tim pointed out, 52 points a game. If he can keep that up, that is Chamberlain height. Yeah.
In that Chamberlain game, by the way, the 100-point game, he had 32 free throw attempts. So it happens historically. This is not to blame Harden. You know what this sounds like? This sounds like three reporters who aren't in Houston, kind of jealous of the guy who's in Houston. That's what it sounds like. Mina Kimes, floor is yours.
All right, I've got a fact for the Harden haters, all of you guys and the rest of the panel. The Ringer's Zach Cram pointed out something yesterday that blew my mind. Even if you take away free throws as a statistic, James Harden is still leading the league in scoring and points per game. Even if you take away the three-point line, you turn those all into 2 points, he would still be leading the league in scoring. It's unbelievable what he's doing. He's absolutely the MVP in my mind.
And how much of this you think is the Rockets and their roster being, needing Harden to do this, Mina, and how much you think this is Harden gaming the system?
Undeniably a combination of both. He's doing it because he has to do it, given the deficiencies on the roster right now. My only concern is that when the postseason comes, he's going to have overexerted himself like he has in the past.
Ramona, last word after the horn.
Yeah, he's shooting because he has to shoot that much because no one has been healthy all year. But as soon as Chris Paul comes back and Capella comes back, Eric Gordon gets back, I don't think he's going to see this level of production or volume. And then therefore the argument
historically nobody remembers.
He takes all the shots.
In that Chamberlain season, he was missing his point guard. He was missing his shoot. Nobody remembers that either. And it's funny, in week 2 of this discussion, now we're on to week 3 and week 4, I had mentioned the other seasons in recent history. Kobe had a 35-point per game season in a year where the league averaged 97 points per game, which is an incredible percentage, right? Well, now, although Harden is in his mid-30s in a league that's averaging 110, we've seen him average 50 in a league that's averaging 110. Now, that percentage is higher than what Kobe was doing. I think we're not at the end of this discussion. I think it's going to go on for a couple more weeks, so we'll save the rest for later. Move on. Oladipo out for the season. This is devastating. A ruptured quad tendon. Ramona, is it all devastation, or should Indy consider going after Mike Conley, or is it all devastation?
I think it's all devastation right now because he's been one of the best stories in the league for the past 2 years, and he's the guy that makes this team go. I mean, he's missed a lot of games already this season, and they hung in there, but I don't think they can stay at third in the East like what they are right now without him. And that brings up the question of Mike Conley, and it's a lot of money to be taking on. It's not how this team was built, but he is an Indianapolis native. He's very popular there, and the Grizzlies have shown a willingness to consider deals for him. And so if there was a sentiment of like, okay, we're not going to just give up on the season because Victor's out the rest of the time, he would be the guy that he'd be one of the guys you want to go get. And I'm fascinated to see if they do it because it's not how they've been built.
Gut reaction? Do they make that move?
I think they make some calls. I mean, they've shown a willingness to. They made the trade for Oladipo, right? Mm-hmm. So I think this year when there's not a clear favorite in the East and you're right there, it's something to consider.
TC, how about you?
I think the feeling of devastation has a chance to be a lot more temporary than we might think when you think about losing a player of Oladipo's caliber. Just go back to last year. Gordon Hayward has lost the first night, and you think that's really going to mess up the Celtics. Mm-hmm. They do what they do. Then they lose Irving in the first round of the playoffs, and they go to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. That team had depth, and it had a kind of a willingness to pull together. Nate McMillan's team will pull together. They play tough. The East remains kind of kind of a crapshoot this year. I do expect him to slide from third to maybe fifth or something, but I wouldn't do anything desperate.
You wouldn't make a trade for Mike Conley or do anybody for...
I wouldn't give up something of value for a short-term.
Woody Page, how about you?
I don't see devastation. This is a young, energetic club. Look how they responded after the injury last night. They went out and still beat the Raptors, one of the top 3 teams in the conference. Conley, that's almost a $90 million investment. I think that's too much to pay for a guy who's in the declining part of his career. I'm going to give you a creative idea. A guy that was really powerful in the playoffs 2 or 3 years ago. Isaiah Thomas is coming back the 1st of February. The trade deadline's February 7th. He's on a 1-year deal with the Nuggets. They're playing extremely well without him. I don't know how he's going to fit into that rotation, honestly. So why don't they go spend money for Isaiah Thomas for the rest of the year? You know what he can do in the postseason. We saw it with Boston. I think he'd be a real good point guard for them to grab.
And a creative idea? Is it? You preface it as a creative idea. What does it create in you, Mina Kimes? The thoughts inside your head after Woody comes up with that?
I'm a little less creative, a little more pessimistic than everyone else. Look, this team is actually pretty good without Oladipo. They have a winning record in games he hasn't played this season. I think they'll make it to the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to do a lot of damage there, which is why if I was them, I would start looking towards 2020. You don't want to break up the young core, but you might think about leveraging some of those assets if you can get a good return for next season.
Momo, I asked for your gut on whether they go after Mike Conley. Now, the biome after Woody Page told us that Isaiah Thomas might be available.
I mean, gosh, Woody hasn't even played yet. You're really shipping him out. I get it. I think Isaiah, I don't know how he's going to fit with them in Denver, but he's that 6th man. If he can do for the Nuggets what Lou Williams does for the Clippers, that might be what gets the Nuggets over the proverbial hump in the Western Conference, or at least into the 2nd, 3rd round of the playoffs. So I don't know if they want to part with him just yet before he's even
We'll move on. Headline 3 from the night. Sixers 122, Spurs 120. This was a raucous game. Simmons' final line, 21, 15, and 10. DeRozan benched for the Spurs' final shot, which wasn't a shot because they never got it off. Pop said they were going for 3 because they didn't want overtime. Woody, did Pop get this one right?
Far be it for me to question Popovich about being a coach. I'm not in that category, but he made a mistake last night.
Thanks for making that clear.
You've got to have a backup possibility. Okay, you want to win on the road with a three-pointer. Seen coaches do it thousands of times. But what happens if you can't get the three-pointer up? Your best scorer, you'd have him on. You could have three-point shooters on the court, but have your best player there to go for 2, tie it, and send it into overtime. He made a tragic mistake last night.
When I saw this, I was befuddled, but then it's Pop, so I questioned myself. But now I'm back to being befuddled, because even if you want to get the 3, the other team doesn't need to know that. You probably still want to keep your best scorer on the floor.
Ramona Shelburne?
Yeah, he's just overthinking it. I mean, Mark Jackson flat out said, he goes, I love Pop. He's a great coach, but what the heck was he doing out there? This was wrong. I mean, I know what he had an explanation for it in his head. It made sense, but you want your best scorer on the court at the end of the game. Come on.
I don't really have a problem with it. He wanted as many three-point shooters as he can get. He's going to throw it to somebody, and they're going to take a 3. Now, as it turned out, they didn't get
that off. Yeah, they didn't actually get the 3 off. That's the problem.
You don't have time to give it to DeRozan and have DeRozan make some kind of move and take a 15-foot shot, so it really wasn't as big a deal.
Time 16, Shelburne 13, Page 15, Kalish 5. I was looking at the stats going into this game today, and Kimes and Shelburne each had 24 career wins. They're trying to be the 12th fastest to 25. Woody and Tim have 25 wins extracted from their body whenever they have a surgery, which they both have had this year. An appendix removed and a double hernia worked on. They can find 25 wins in the folds of their couch. We'll see what happens if buy or sell next.
Bleed 25 wins.
Around the Horn is brought to you by Domino's. Order online and track your order.
9 Eastern on ESPN.
Welcome back to Around the Horn, coming to you from the Heineken River Deck at Pier 17.
What if I told you the Cleveland Browns were dysfunctional? Yeah, I think you'd believe it. Here's the ESPN magazine piece from Seth Wickersham, though. 2 details. That Jimmy Haslam ate his hard-boiled eggs at the table and the shells crackled underneath to be cleaned up later. Okay? And the one that's been getting the most run today, the porn accidentally projected on the walls of HQ after a social media mishap. national panel. I'm going to ask you if those are really signs of dysfunction or, in the first case, boss privilege. In the second case, just a fluky, unfortunate mistake. Mina Kimes, can you start us off?
So some of this is normal bad workplace stuff. I mean, most of us aren't literally walking on eggshells around our bosses, but that's not that bad. What is bad is that Haslam, per Wickersham's piece, was intervening and meddling in personnel, making bad hiring decisions, and then firing guys before he should have probably. That's the question. Can this turn around now that they have the quarterback in place? I have no idea. It's going to be a big test.
Woody Page?
I mean, they could have had a quarterback if Haslam hadn't thought that Teddy Bridgewater had a fish handshake and they moved away from him. It shows you what sort of problems those owners, who I like to call Jimmy and Dee from Tennessee, that they didn't know what they were doing. They finally turned it over to an adult in Dorsey, and they're going in the right direction. If they just stay out of the way, that's what happens when you put people from Tennessee in charge of anything.
Right. Thank you, Bess. Yes, from our favorite volunteer. It's easy to say stay away for owners, but not exactly always something that happens. Tim Kalisha, how about you?
I do like the fact that the article reveals that Hugh Jackson, when he got fired, he threw the owner and the GM out of his office. I like that from you. That's showing me something even on the way out the door. But the two important things they've touched on, you get the right GM, John Dorsey. A lot of teams would love to have him. A lot of teams would love to have Baker Mayfield. That can solve a lot of your problems going forward.
Shelburne.
Look, as a reporter, I'm here for all the juicy details. And when you have 5 regimes in 6 years, you're going to get a lot of disgruntled employees who are willing to share them with the media. So I love the story. I thought it was a fun read, and it reveals that the owner has a lot of weird, strange habits, which probably a lot of billionaire owners do. We just found out about them now because he fired everyone.
Buy or sell two, Nuggets Jazz last night. Favors Plumlee, which sounds like a Betty Crocker dessert. Is the NBA going to bust Jokic and Murray and Gary Harris for being off the bench and on the court for it? Also, check out the dude in the back, front row, under the hoop, trying to separate the guys in the fight. Like he can do anything from there.
I got this.
Woody, will the league enforce this with the Nuggets?
Well, they're my Nuggets, but I think in this case they have violated the rules of the NBA. They complained after the game that they didn't come onto the court. No, but the rule says wandering away from the vicinity of the bench, and they were on the baseline. So especially the Joker, I think, needs that 1-game suspension and that fine.
Kalisha.
I think they have to suspend him. Otherwise, Amari Stoudemire and Boris Diaw and the Phoenix Suns fans are going to ask, how did they get suspended in the Western Conference Finals for walking toward Steve Nash, who's laying on the ground, and these guys didn't get the same penalty?
Although,
they got to go.
Historically, I think everybody agrees that was a terrible suspension at that time, and maybe that's moving in a different direction. Ramona Shelburne, how about you?
The rule.
Yeah, they can ask it. The answer is David Stern was commissioner back then, and Adam Silver's commissioner now. And David was interpreting the letter of the law, and Adam sort of interprets the spirit of the law. And I think in this one, this is a real judgment call. I don't think they looked aggressive, like they were trying to get involved in it. They just walked away from the bench, and so I don't think they'll get it.
They broke the rule, but it's a dumb rule, and I hope Ramona's right about it not being enforced, because at most, Jokic looked like mildly interested in the fight. Like they were clearly not being aggressive or trying to get involved.
I'm all here for the nickname for Jokic, Paige, being the Joker, although you would wonder, should it be the Yoker? Or is Jimmy Haslam the Yoker for eating those hard-boiled eggs?
Yes.
We'll move on. Tennessee, your number one, the overtime win versus Vanderbilt to get to 17-1. This wouldn't be a highlight of the season. Vanderbilt was winless in conference, but this was a bananas finish to regulation. And it was Grant Williams, 43-8, 23 of 23 from the free throw line. So it's not just James Harden, people. He'd be player of the year in a lot of years. It's tough to go through Zion. Tim, what'd you learn about Tennessee, and do they really seem like the number one that they are?
I think they are the number one team, and I think they're deserving. I know that they came close to losing to a team that was 0-5 in the SEC. They played poorly in the first half. Grant Williams overcame it. Bad things happen on the road, but that's a solid team Rick Barnes has, and they're in a little bad spell right now. They'll come out of it.
Yeah, well, they lost early enough. I mean, they're number one because their loss is earlier than the other teams that could vie for that title. So good timing.
Okay, but are they a good team? What do you see from them on tape?
Yeah, I think they're a good team, but we'll see in March when.
We'll see in March. All right. Mina Kimes, what are you seeing from them today in January?
Yeah, I think they deserve to be there, but their time at the Rocky Top will be brief because the only reason they are number one is because of Duke getting upset on account of those 2 injuries. Trey Jones is going to come back soon. We saw how good they were.
They're number one because they're 17-1, people. Woody Page, you're our volunteer. Please break it down for us.
Yes, Tennessee is where it belongs. Rocky Top. For sure. As the only person here who's ever played in the game for Tennessee in those uniforms, I can tell you this senior-laden team belongs at the top and is going to remain there for a while. Joe Lunardi is saying they're not the eye test. Well, if you saw that game last night, they came back from by scoring 16 points and outscoring Vanderbilt and just blowing them out.
You can't mark them down for what you refuse to mark other teams for. Duke lost the game to Syracuse at home. They lost one of their players who were in the game. Grant Williams, though, honestly, he was the player of the year in the SEC last year. And if this is not a Zion year where Zion's doing things that no one's ever seen before, that could be your player of the year. All right, Times Kalishaw going the wrong way. Page and Shelburne. The Drew and Momo showdown next.